Hi everyone, welcome to Cooking Matters at the Store presented by Interfaith Food Shuttle. Thank you all for joining today. I'm going to wait about a minute or two more to see if more people chime in so that I can give them access and then we'll get started. Thanks for waiting.
Hello, are we just waiting for folks to join?
Yes, hi Kim, yes we are. How are you?
I'm well. How are you, Jasmine?
I'm good. Thanks for joining.
Sure.
All right, and as folks are joining in, we're just waiting a minute more for more people to join in and then we'll get started, but thank you all for joining. All right, let's get started. So I'll do an introduction. My name is Jasmine Henry, and I am the Community Health Education Programs Manager here at the Interfaith Food Shuttle. And today we are going to be presenting to you Cooking Matters at the Store, a virtual tour. As some of you may know, we implement the Cooking Matters curricula here at Food Shuttle. We partner with organizations in the community to host our classes and also partner with Food Lion to host Cooking Matters at the Store tours. But due to the recent pandemic, we have not been able to do those in-person programs. So we are looking at new ways that we can keep health education at the forefront and still get knowledge out there to our participants as they need it. I wanted to start first with if people could maybe chat in some shopping experiences that they have encountered during the last few weeks of COVID-19, and maybe we can use that as a way to kind of get the conversation going about the importance of, still making sure we pay attention to food labels and things like that while we're shopping, even during a pandemic. Shortages of items, yes, I have seen shortages of items. I've also seen where people have, they're putting restrictions on how much we can get, especially on things like protein, our meats and things like that. So definitely seen the restriction. Yep, lack of meat and eggs, definitely. So those are all things that we've been dealing with. Increased prices of meats available. I could see that, supply and demand. I hate that, but I could definitely see that being something that we have to deal with. And so with this tour, I definitely want to look at ways that we can choose lean protein options and also ones that are a little bit cheaper so we can have our meatless Mondays and things like that. Faster shopping and longer time in between trips, that's true. A lot of grocery stores now have, set up these one way in, one way out thing, directions. And it does allow us to shop faster. I think people also are shopping faster because they're just afraid to be out in the community or in the public for longer periods of time. So yeah, while we probably would have browsed to the grocery store, going up and down every aisle, I think that now we have our list and we're going in, getting just what we need so that we can get out and get back home. So thank you all for answering those questions. All right, so as I said, we're going to talk about cooking matters at the store. So I want to ask you, what are you excited to learn about today during this virtual tour? And I actually have a poll question for that. Let me just pull that up. And you guys can take a moment to answer that. Just kind of tell us what you're excited to learn about during this virtual store tour today. And even if you are calling in from a community partner that we work with, feel free to answer these questions. That's absolutely fine. Lots of people interested in shopping on a budget, of course. Also, that's tied with making healthier food choices. And then how to compare cost of food in different package sizes. Okay, comparing food labels is always important. All right, looks like most people are interested in how to shop on the budget. Awesome, we'll definitely go over that today. We'll definitely go over that today. I'm going to end this poll in about 2 seconds. All right, it looks like 67% of people are interested in shopping on a budget. Then there's about 50% who are looking forward to making healthier food choices. Today, we're going to learn about how to make smart choices in the store while watching our food dollars. We kind of have to imagine the sections of the grocery store tour that we're talking about, but hopefully we can paint a nice picture with this PowerPoint slide that we have today. We first, as I said before, want to make sure that we're shopping with a list and that our list will contain proteins, fruits, vegetables, and grains. I think that it's important to shop with a list for many reasons. We'll go over those, but does anyone, I don't know, sometimes make a list and forget it at home or forget it in the car? I know I do that often. And so it's not very helpful then, or if it's in the car, you can run out and get it. But shopping with the list makes a huge difference. And that's also a way that we can save money. All right, moving on. So on our list, we should have, of course, the 5 food groups. We should have something with proteins. Let me just, all right. Proteins, fruits, vegetables, grains, and also dairy. And we'll talk about how to choose healthier items in each of these food groups as we move forward in this virtual tour. All right, so what do you guys know about My Plate? Where have you seen this picture before? You guys could just chat in and I'll read out. Where have you seen My Plate? At schools, at the Post Center, of course, on the internet, online, definitely. And we know that My Plate is just a tool that we can use to make a balanced meal. It's just a model, it doesn't have to be followed to a T, but we do want to include all of these food groups in our meals each day. But let's talk about how our personal meals look in comparison with the My Plate model. So the next poll question I have for you is, how does My Plate compare to the way you usually eat your own plate or the servings that you have at home? Does My Plate look the same? as what you have at home? Is it similar? Is it totally off? Do you eat less fruits and vegetables, maybe more protein than what my plate is saying, that quarter of a plate? Do you have, half your plate fruits and vegetables as they suggest? Are you more of a grains person? Do you really like bread? And so you'll have more of that on your plate. Just want to hear where everyone is in regards to my plate. I would say that I try and be intentional about the serving size of each food group that I have on my plate. And then also it's helpful to use smaller plates because then we don't pack as much food on it. Awesome. So I was just sharing the poll results with you guys. It looks like most people serve their food similar to what my plate suggests, which is awesome. And then we have some people who eat less fruits and vegetables than what my plate shows. And that's also okay. We can always work towards my plate. And also just keep in mind that it's just a model. So we just want it to kind of be at the back of our minds at all times. Okay, well, one more question for you guys. Why do you think it's important to eat from the 5 food groups? Maybe you could chat in why you think it's important to eat from all 5 food groups. And let's see, we talked about the way the servings are set up, half of your plate fruits and vegetables, but why should we have half of our plates as fruits and vegetables? Why should we include all food groups in all forms? I think it's important to note that no single food group has all the nutrients or the good stuff that we need. And so I think that it's important to be able to get all those nutrients that we need from different selections and different variety of food items. Yes, it's healthy. It creates a balanced meal. All that is correct. Thank you. And then one more question about my plate. What can my plate teach us about how to allot our food in a food budget? When we're creating a food budget or creating our list, how does the list compare to my plate? And what should we maybe spend more money on or less money on? Just looking at it from my standpoint, I would say since my plate suggests that all of our, half of our plate be fruits and vegetables, we should probably spend more money on those fruits and vegetables. And then we could save some money on things like proteins and grains, which can be a little bit more expensive than our fruits and vegetables. But we can also talk about ways to save on fruits and vegetables when we get to the produce section. All right, so protein. What are some of the types of proteins that you guys enjoy? I'm gonna pull up a poll for this. And you can answer more than one, but what are some of the types of protein that you enjoy? All right, looks like everyone has answered. And from our group today, lots of people are enjoying their poultry items, so their chicken or turkey, and then beef. And then we have pork, seafood, things like beans, eggs, nuts, and seeds. So we will talk about ways that we can save money on your items like chicken or turkey that can be a little bit more expensive. right, so in the grocery store, some of you may or may not have noticed that some of our meats, such as ground beef, will have a percentage on them. When you're looking at the fat percentage, you want to go for a percentage of ground beef that is more lean. So in choosing the more lean option, it would be the one that's labeled 93% beef and then about 7% fat. So that would be the more lean option. The other options, as you can see, include ground beef that are maybe 73% lean, 27% fat, or 85% lean, and then 15% fat. It's a good idea also that if you do catch the ground beef on sale, that's the most lean is at 93%. So maybe that may be good, something that you could buy in bulk. It may be a good idea to buy that in bulk so that you can store it in your freezer. Other lean protein options include ground turkey and also chicken. If we could go with canned chicken or canned tuna, if we were looking for cost-efficient items, making sure that our canned chicken and our canned tuna are packaged in water. But those are also ways to save money on some protein items. And then also the other suggestion is to freeze meat to cook later if you're worrying about it going bad. So you absolutely do not have to cook it as soon as you buy it from the grocery store. Let's see. Any other types of protein that we haven't talked about, and maybe how do you guys prepare those? So if you could just chat in other protein options and maybe how you prepare them for a quick meal. I would say that variety is important, and variety will also allow you to save some money as well. So you can choose things from seafood to chicken, eggs, nuts, beans. Like I said, you could opt for meatless Mondays. That's a pretty common thing in households at dinner time on Mondays. And then what about when you cook these items? Some people may know what to buy for a lean or less expensive item, but what about cooking it? Preparation methods are important. Healthy preparation methods include baking, sauteing, especially if it's something like fish or chicken. You could bake fish or bake chicken or saute them instead of frying. So that would be a healthier preparation option for our proteins. Any questions so far? All right, we'll keep moving. Well, does anyone have any tips on saving money on protein items or things that they practice with their family members? And this slide just talks about non-perishable protein, and how they are great resources, things to have in your pantry and keep in stock. Beans, don't go bad as fast as a meat would if you left it in the refrigerator. You also want to look for low sodium options. So when you're buying your canned produce, or canned protein, you want to make sure that you choose the low sodium or no salt added options. And then always an option is to rinse beans before you use them. If you can't find the no salt added, you can rinse beans up to 3 times and it will take away a great deal of the salt that's in the can. All right, so fresh, frozen, and canned. Let's talk about the differences between these 3 forms of produce and maybe what's best for your family. So in your opinion, if you could poll in and tell me what type of produce do you believe is best? Do you think it's fresh? Do you think it's frozen? Do you prefer canned? Which produce is best in your opinion? Or do you think there are pros and cons for most of them? All right, looks like everyone has answered. So I'm going to share the results. And most of the crowd says that all different pros and cons, all have different pros and cons, and all count toward making half of your plate full of fruits and vegetables. Some would say that fresh is best, and then also frozen. That's new for me. Could I ask why frozen would be best if you could just chat in? That one's new for me. I've never heard that from a participant. A lot of people will say fresh, and then during the Cooking Matters class, we'll actually go over more into detail about the pros and cons of the three. But thanks for participating with me. Awesome. Okay, so Alicia says that she said frozen because frozen is often picked at the peak of freshness. I have also heard that, Alicia, so yeah, I'm with you on that. But I've also heard that for canned. So I don't know, what do we believe? Let me stop sharing these results. All right, so let's talk about our fruit options when we're talking about canned. So all options are great options, as we said, fresh, frozen, and canned. There are pros and cons to each. So when we're thinking of fresh, sometimes we know that fresh fruit can be a little bit more expensive, especially if it's not in season. And when we say something is in season, we're talking about it being grown locally and readily available, that it hasn't traveled a long distance to get to where you are at that current grocery store. Also with frozen, like Alicia said, it's picked at its peak freshness. And so you aren't losing any nutrients. And then also with canned, picked at its peak freshness. But one thing we want to try and remember is to buy our fruit that it's canned. We want to buy it in 100% juice or water. It's a lot healthier to do it that way than to purchase it in heavy syrup or light syrup. So we want to buy it in 100% juice or water. And just taking a look at the label on the front or even the back of the food label, you'll be able to tell kind of what it's canned in. What's one reason we would maybe purchase frozen over fresh? One reason we would purchase frozen over fresh. I'd say that we'd purchase frozen over fresh or canned over fresh, or maybe just purchase one form of produce over the other. Maybe it depends on the recipe that you're going to make. And also the cost. Elena said it depends on the cost, definitely. If it's the fall and you want strawberries, maybe they would be a little bit more cost effective if you purchase them frozen rather than fresh. They tend to not be as cheap as they are right now due that it's strawberry season. So a note said, when you plan to use the item, that's correct. So if if you're gonna use it that night, you may, you can purchase it fresh, but if you're gonna wait a few more days, then it would be maybe a good idea to purchase it in another form. And it also lasts longer. That's correct, Alicia, thank you. It lasts longer when you purchase it frozen or canned. Some pros and cons also that people bring up is that different forms of buying produce, it changes the texture. So texture may be a thing for some participants. If you are like me, if you're like me, then you notice how green beans squeak when they are frozen. And so I don't really like frozen green beans, but I love green beans that are fresh, and I like green beans that are canned. And so sometimes texture may be the, kind of give off for in your preferences as well. Someone said they don't like squeaky green beans either. No one ever notices that, or I guess they don't think about it until, I say it, and then they're like, oh, you're right. Yeah, it's just one of those things with me. Yeah. All right, what about veggies? So same with fruits when you're purchasing in all forms. Our forms are great. All forms will fit into a healthy diet when we're trying to make half of our plate fruits and vegetables. But also with vegetables, if they're fresh, they can be more expensive if they are not in season. Um, as with fruit, they are picked at their peak freshness if you're choosing the canned or frozen option. And then with canned, you want to be sure that you are purchasing the no salt added options and or rinsing before using. And if you take a look in the grocery store on the canned aisle, say we were comparing the food labels of green beans that were no salt added, and then not there, okay, and then green beans that were like the original can. You would see, well, if we had the low sodium green beans, you would see about a 50% decrease in the sodium percentages on the food label as compared to the original form of green beans in the can. So there's many ways that we could cut down on the added sodium into our diets, starting with choosing no salt added or low sodium canned vegetables. All right, so let's take a moment to look at unit pricing. So right now, while people are in the grocery store, kind of in a hurry and not really paying attention to different things or small details such as unit pricing, it may be a little bit more like you may have to put a little bit more thought into actually comparing your unit prices because really you're thinking about getting in the grocery store and leaving so that you're not exposed to anything. But it's really important that we pay attention to unit pricing. And unit pricing is just comparing the items so that you are sure you get the most bang for your buck. A lot of us are paying for convenience, and sometimes we don't realize that, as the example with these baby carrots here. And then most stores have actually done us a favor by placing the unit price on the tag as well as the retail price. So as the example we have in this picture here, if we were in the grocery store in the produce section, we probably show you the same example, but let's take a look at a bag of 16-ounce whole carrots. If we were to purchase the bag, we would pay about 4 cents per ounce of that bag. Now let's say that we were wanted to, kind of compare that to a bag of baby carrots that was 12 ounces. So it's already less ounces in the bag, less food in the bag, but we'd be paying 16 ounces per bag for the baby carrots. And one reason is because we're paying for convenience. We're paying for those carrots to be cut into baby carrots, and then we're also paying for them to, likely rinsed and things like that. So one way to cut cost in the grocery store is to pay attention to our unit pricing. And unit pricing is very important when you're buying things in bulk, maybe like apples, if you're buying things like carrots, even when you get to your cereal and your yogurt, you can definitely pay attention to unit pricing. And we'll talk about that when we get to the dairy section. All right, so our next section in the grocery store of this virtual tour is grains. And I just want to take a poll real quick. How can we tell the difference between, or how can we tell if a grain is indeed, in fact, a whole grain? And I'm going to pull the poll up for you guys. Is it because it's brown? Is it because the package says multi-grain? Is it because the fourth ingredient says whole grain? Or should it be the first ingredient? Can it be the last ingredient? Does that mean it's whole grain? How can we determine that an item is a whole grain item? You guys are so smart. right, and not to my surprise, everyone has said that the first ingredient needs to tell us that, you know, it has some type of whole grain in that food item, and that's how we can determine that it is a whole grain item. Thank you for participating. So when we're talking about grains, we're talking about things like our cereal, our bread, crackers, and also pasta. You may hear some people say that you can go to the grocery store and shop in the parameters of the store, and then that's all you need. Well, not really, because you may have your grains in the actual aisle of the grocery store. So that would be at least one aisle that you would have to go into. But I agree, the parameters of the grocery store, you could shop there and possibly get everything that you need in relation to my plate. All right, so let's talk about bread for a second. When we're choosing grains, we want to at least make half of our grains whole. That's the USDA recommendation. And so we want to try and choose whole grains whenever possible. How do we know that it's a whole grain? Well, the first ingredient should say 100% whole grain, as in our examples with the Food Line and 100% whole wheat sliced bread. Down at the bottom, the first ingredient says whole wheat flour. So that's one way that we know that that item is in fact a whole grain item. Not to be confused with words like multigrain or enriched wheat flour. That does not mean that the item is a whole grain. It means that it has been enriched. Some of those nutrients have been taken away and then put back, which where the word enriched comes from. And then also, just because a bread may say that it's multigrain does not mean that it's a whole grain. It could have tons of grains in that bread, but if the first ingredient is not made with whole grain or does not say whole grain, then it's not a whole grain item. One way to be safe is to look at the ingredients list. You want to make sure that first ingredient says what you want it to say, whole wheat flour or something pertaining to whole grains. And you also don't want to get kind of confused by color. Color could come from brown sugar, it could come from molasses, and also food coloring. Like I said, you don't want to get confused with things that say multigrain or 7-grain. Those do not indicate a whole grain, they just mean that there may be 7 grains in that bread. So here are just some examples of things you may see in the store. I know we all love honey wheat bread, but most times it's not a whole grain. So let's go to our cereal, crackers, and pasta. When picking up other grain items, you want to look for ingredients that pertain to that item being whole wheat as well. You want, as always, the first ingredient to pertain or say something that says whole wheat flour. It could say whole wheat durum. You just want to look for words that highlight that. And then whole wheat will keep us fuller longer. It has more protein and fiber than our more white pastas or our enriched pastas. And so that helps to keep us fuller longer. As with the goldfish here, you want to pay attention to some signage where the boxes or average packaging may say, you know, made with whole grain or contains whole grain. It's still a good idea to take a look at the back of the food item, look at the ingredients list and see what you can find, see what your first ingredient comes out to be. I actually want to go, let's see, back to cereals really quick. One way to choose healthier cereal options, not just it being whole grain, but we don't want our cereal to contain a lot of sugar, is to look for sugars that have whole grain and also contain less sugar. And so when you're in the grocery store, you can pick up maybe your favorite cereal and then maybe pick up one that looks a little bit similar to it, but maybe healthier, and compare the food labels, see how much sugar is in a serving size. And maybe the serving sizes are even different. Sweeter sugars will have a less of a serving size than their counterparts who are a little bit healthier. And if you want, you know, something sweet to add to your cereal, you could always include fresh fruit like berries. You could include bananas, and those are just great ideas or great ways to add a little bit of sweetness to your breakfast. Dried fruit would work as well. All right, so let's talk about dairy. So with dairy, we want to try and choose, of course, lower fat dairy options. We're choosing our milk and yogurt. And let's see. I have a question for you all. Has anyone ever tried to transition their family to lower fat dairy foods? How did it go? And you can choose more than one answer if that pertains to you, but we want to hear, how did it go? Did you try and, you know, your family enjoyed it, or did you try and have to go back? Did the kids or maybe your significant other, could they really tell the difference? Could they not tell a difference at all? It looks like for the most part, um, most of our participants here have transitioned to low-fat dairy items. And if anyone would just like to chat in and tell me how you've done that, one way that's recommended is to not go cold turkey, but maybe transition from whole milk to 2. And then once your family gets used to 2, you go to the 1. When and if they get used to the 1, you could also go all the way down to skim. Or you could stop at 1 depending on your family's preference. Could also maybe do half and half. I know parents who have, if they are trying to transition over to whole grain, they'll maybe mix whole grain pasta and white pasta, or brown rice and white rice. And so it's not too big of a difference for the kids. Yes. So Brenda says when kids were younger, she mixed items half and half. So yeah, that's a great way, and it's still working. So. All right, let's talk about our milk options. So we do want to choose a lower fat milk whenever possible. We want to choose skim or 2% whenever possible. Like, you know, some of the participants have said, if you like whole milk, or you can try mixing it with water if you're in the transition period to transition, before you transition to a lower percentage of fat. You could also try some dairy-free alternatives if there are any dietary restrictions in your family, but you want to make sure to look at the protein content. Back to talking about unit pricing. Unit prices is something that we can pay attention to when we're buying our milk. For instance, this gallon milk here, it's 2%. The unit price of it is $3.39 per ounce. And then the half gallon of fat-free milk is $3.98 per ounce. And that is solely due to the amount of milk you're buying. It doesn't have anything to do with the fat percentage. And then, of course, our whole milk and our 2% milk have the same unit price. Another thing we want to be sure to pay attention to with our milk, or sorry, with dairy, are the fat content. And then we also want to pay attention to sugar. So we'll talk about that when we talk about yogurt. So of course we want to choose low-fat yogurt whenever possible. Flavored yogurt such as like the vanilla picture here, can have a lot of added sugar. And so one way we can add sweetness to yogurt if we buy plain is to sweeten it with a homemade granola. You could sweeten it with some cinnamon and also some fresh or frozen fruit. You could choose canned as well. Again, looking at our unit prices, yogurt is cheaper when you purchase it in bulk. So if you purchase the big containers that's pictured here, you'll see that the unit price is about 6 ounces, 6 cents per ounce, rather than, I don't think we have an example, but rather than the smaller cups, which would be a little bit more. And like I said, you could build your own parfaits, or, you know, sweeten it with whatever you have at home rather than buying it with sugar added. Oops, sorry, go back. Are there any questions regarding any of the things that we've been through so far? I do just want to add one more poll question. All right, so all the other poll questions were anonymous, but this poll question is for participants who would like to have the $10 Food Lion gift card mailed to them. I would need your response on this so that it just shows you were present throughout the end of this virtual tour. And again, this is the only question that is not anonymous, so that I know who entered it. All right, well, I appreciate you all chiming in today and making this tour interactive. We could go a little bit more into, or much more into detail if we were in the grocery store. So maybe next time, but I'm really glad that you guys were able to join us today. And I hope that this virtual tour was helpful. Let's see. So we had a question that says, why is 2% the optimal choice as opposed to 1%? I don't think it's the optimal choice. I think that when families are transitioning from whole, it'd be maybe more reasonable to have them go to 2% rather than going directly to skim milk. And so they could keep, you know, transitioning down or just kind of stay at 2%. All right, any more questions? Well, I do appreciate everyone again for joining me. If you are a participant and I have all of your information, I will send out your $10 Food Lion gift card. And thanks so much. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, jasmine@foodshuttle.org. And you can also call the Food Shuttle and I'll be available. Thank you. Yes, Lauren, it's recorded.